Is it all me now?
It's on you. Go for it.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome back to, I'll say part two, but kind of an extended version of Tuesday's lesson. And I did go back and count according to Fox News. If you want to listen to them, we're in day 51 of lockdown. So hope you're not going totally crazy by now. I'm going to share my screen here and kind of see if I can totally screw things up or do well. Okay. I see what I'm doing here. Okay, cool.
We can see your screen.
Yeah, now you should be able to see engine performance. Okay. Yeah, I've got another computer working next to me here, so I can kind of watch what everyone else is seeing. So, okay, hang on. I got to shut the door here. The dog's barking. Wife's on the hairdryer. That's one of those home things. Cool. Hang on just a sec. I need to get where I can see me. No, I guess I don't. So, Jimmy, now you can start the recording. Okay. First of all, we're doing a lesson on map sensors, but it's going to be an instructor-led lesson. Hang on here. I'm still not happy. I think I'm happy now. Okay. I'm going to review kind of what we did yesterday just to make sure everybody's up to speed, and I'll do that here in a second. I want to kind of warn you or encourage you that this is going to be a little bit of an input. I mean, I want this to kind of simulate what you would do with your students. And having said that, there's going to be just a few questions that I'm going to throw out there, not a bunch, and I want you to answer in chat because it seems to be a little bit more controlled than if you're doing it, through the audio, turning your mic back on and everything. So let's do this. I'm going to review here real quick. First of all, yesterday we did I showed you kind of the technology that was involved in being able to do this type of a deal with an actual one of our engine benches that's up in Quebec City, and I'm of course in Oklahoma, and how we were able to kind of coordinate that and present a lesson to you yesterday. We did one of 4 different case studies, and it's a matter of kind of manipulating the data to the computer that the computer on a car would see from a map sensor. And yesterday, we spent a lot of time just kind of going through the process and talking about the first case study, which was where we stopped the voltage going. Basically, it would be almost probably the equivalent of unplugging the map sensor. We sent a 0-volt signal back to the PCM, and we had the engine bench operate and show you what that does with that particular case study. And how it shows up on a scan tool, how it shows up on a DVOM, and we discussed, the discussions, the learning discussions that would come as a result of that. So, just to give you a roadmap of today, we're going to do 2, 3, and 4 scenarios, and I'm going to kind of step the voltage up from 0 to 5 altogether. And we reviewed yesterday, that the operating voltage of a normal, map sensor in operation is probably somewhere between 1 volt and 4.5 volts. So yesterday's was 0 volts, so the system threw a code showing too low of a circuit voltage. I'm gonna step it up here in just a minute to 0.8 volts. Then I'm gonna go to 1.5 volts, and then I'm gonna put 5 volts to it, which is really more than system or the computer wants to see. And we're just gonna kind of play around with what it does to the engine and what codes, check engine lights come on, what doesn't come on, what codes are stored, what codes aren't stored, and kind of talk about it a little bit. I think it's important to know, we were discussing this a little bit this morning in our, what we call a stand-up meeting that we have every day. about the fact that in the old days, back when a lot of us were probably actually holding a wrench, car came in with a miss, and you fixed the miss. And generally the miss stayed there until it got to the shop. You were able to isolate it, you were repaired it, you test drove it, and everything ran fine. If a car started getting if something started breaking down enough to where it caused a real drivability problem, a lot of times the car came in on a tow truck. And so I think Al Santini called it tennis shoe mode instead of limp home mode. So you were walking, and it came in, and it was somewhat obvious. The evidence was pretty clear at that point in time. There wasn't any computer to kind of cover things up. Cars kind of moved into the limp home mode, and for the most part, I think some cars still probably do that. But I think you'll see as we start kind of playing with the computer today, we kind of start fooling the computer. You'll see that the computer is trying to kind of get the car back home, and not necessarily even in a limp home version, but in a pretty decent drivability version, meaning sometimes the performance isn't all that off considering what you've damaged or taken out of the system. So I think cars kind of self-heal is kind of what I was trying to go to there. So and then we'll notice too today that when we put a fault or a code in there, a case study in there, it might take a few key cycles for it to actually kind of manifest itself in its worst case scenario and actually turn a check engine light on. And a lot of that has to do with, forcing the monitors to run and stuff too. Now you have to realize that this isn't a real car, and there's certain, continuous monitors will be continuously monitoring. There's some stuff that we can't get to run because you can't do a drive cycle, et cetera, et cetera. But we're playing with the map sensor, and I think we're going to be okay on that. So I think in reality, there is, again, no perfect world of diagnosis. And what I want to kind of do today is to prove that. So let me refresh your memory. We're on a 2014 Hyundai Accent with a G4 FD engine in it, which is a 4-cylinder GDI engine, and it has a manual transmission. Talking about map sensors, we discussed the operation of them yesterday. Don't necessarily want to do that today. I'm kind of anyway, I don't want to go over that again. I want you all to probably have taught your students or have prior knowledge when we walk up to the bench. I'm going to review that normal value when it's operating is, again, 1 volt to 4.5 volts. It's got a 5-volt reference, and it varies the resistance depending on the load inside the intake manifold. We're looking for probably 1 to 1.5 volts at idle, and we're looking at probably 4.5 volts at wide open throttle. Just like yesterday, we verified open circuit voltage, the battery at rest, to make sure we have a decent battery to work with. And then we also verified charging system, charging voltage, to make sure that the alternator, et cetera, were working. And we have so in essence, we have I guess a good patient to work on here. And like yesterday, we're using the Autel Max Assist. It has a feature or an app built into it called TeamViewer. And I've connected to TeamViewer through my computer here. I'll show you right here. I've got it set up where I can control the scan tool from my house here in Oklahoma. And what I want to do real quick is, I had this actually set up, and it apparently kicked me out a little bit. I'm going to pull certain PIDs up that I want to watch. We're going to watch the map sensor. We're going to watch intake air pressure temperature, intake air pressure. The actual PSI, I guess. And then I want to look at intake air temperature. Sorry, I was getting out of whack there. So I'm going to pull those 3 up. And so right now, basically, I think Kevin's got the engine running. Let me go over here and see. Kevin, you'll probably have to unmute so we see you up on the screen there. There you go. Okay. Okay, so let's go back real quick and look. I should have known, we're at actually atmospheric pressure, barometric pressure, and the voltage is 4, so it's showing that the engine is not really running right now. Kevin, go ahead and you put the case study in it, is that right or not? I don't think you have. Okay, Start it up for just a second and let's hear it. Did that freeze up on everybody or just me? Okay, so it
I
started.
think you just switched your screen, Tim.
Okay, I think you can see it now though, right?
Yeah, I see the bench.
Okay, so see it's responding the way it's supposed to. The voltage that he's got, that he's checking at the breakout box is the equivalent of what I'm going to show you here on the scan tool. So that's pretty much what that's doing. And it blows. So he's got it basically at like I said, around 1 volt at idle. And I don't necessarily need to go full throttle because we don't have a load on it. So, and that matches what we're seeing right here. There's the voltage that he was seeing on the DVOM, and we're just watching the actual pressure on it right now. So, Kevin, let's go ahead and put case study. You say 11? Okay, and you can see hopefully on that voltmeter that it, yeah, yours is caught up now. It dropped the voltage to 8. I'm going to swing back over to the scan tool real quick and show you that we put 0.8 volts in there right now. It's actually kind of locked the map, the actual pressure reading in. I'm going to drop this little scan or this little scope tool down and let you see. So we're flatlining, I probably should have, like I did yesterday, show you that when it was operating correctly and Kevin worked the throttle, that graph went up and down, with barometric pressure, or with the load and I guess the pressure change inside the intake manifold. That graph followed it. Right now we have forced it to stay locked at 0.8, and you can see where it's holding it steady. So what? Let's look real quick. What? Is it running, Kevin? Okay. Start it back up and see. See, we don't have a check engine light on yet. Sounds like it's got a cam in it. Sounds like a little race Hyundai. Give it a little bit of fuel. Or open the accelerator. Yeah, you probably have to describe to me how that feels. Was there any hesitation? I can't, hey, Kevin, I can't hardly hear you. Sorry. No. Don't touch your headphone.
We can't hear Kevin at all.
Yeah. We've been using headphones. As soon as he touches them, it like disconnects him. It's like a hang up button on it. So.
Yeah, we still can't hear you, Kevin.
Okay. Okay. If you'll notice now, he did start like the 3rd time, and we do have a check engine light on. It doesn't want to even run. So what's going on? I mean, let's ask that real quick.
You're asking that of the room, to be clear, yes?
Yeah. I'm kind of letting everybody listen to it, and then I'm asking if anybody, and I can't watch the chat, so I'm going to either have Jeff or Jimmy kind of tell me what's going on there. So it won't. So Kevin, it won't start without giving it any accelerator pedal. Try giving it some accelerator pedal. So if we move the accelerator pedal, we can actually get it to start. It won't start on its own. So it's just like really way out of whack. It doesn't respond. So I'm going to go do something real quick. Are you guys pretty comfortable with the symptoms now? So we can see again that so I want to go back and look at something real quick. I think in the in the field, you would probably go take a look at why the check engine light's on. So I'm going to go back and read codes. Oh no. So P106, manifold map pressure, circuit range performance. What's kind of cool is you can do this number and look up and see the amount of intake air must be inputted to ECM to determine fuel injection quantity. Talks a lot about maps. Let's look down here real quick on the DTC information. Oops, sorry. Pretty sensitive to the scroll. Man. Maybe the side effect of being in Oklahoma and being in Canada, it's hard to manipulate. If intake manifold pressure is lower than the minimum threshold value or higher than the max, according to RPM and TPS under normal TPS signal input, it'll set that code. So I don't know. What do you think? I think what it's seeing, since we've locked technically the load to the engine, we've locked it down for what the computer sees, and then Kevin's moving the throttle. It's got to be somewhat confusing. Start it back up again, Kevin. I remember yesterday we did it 4 or 5, 6 times. Kind of mess with the gas pedal. Or does it have, like I said, a huge hesitation? Is it trying to idle on its own now? Okay. We'll look at something again here. Okay, that's what I was waiting for there. So if we notice now, we've got a second code and it's accelerated pedal position. So point being, it's getting confused by the fact that it's showing no load on the engine and the accelerated pedal position is showing a load on the engine. Make sense?
So I think we need to ask a direct question.
Okay. I guess I answered my own question. My question was going to be, why did it show up to be an accelerated pedal position sensor? And I was going to wait to see that. So I answered it. So let's I guess let's file that in our memory. Let's go to the next one where we're going to lock the voltage at 1.5, which is really pretty close to idle. So Kevin, if you can back out of 9 and put case study 10 in there. I'm going to go, you have the engine off right now. I'm going to clear real quick. Okay. Yeah. So now you can see he's got it. Well, you're back to normal. You're getting ready to put the next case study in, which is number 10. So maybe in the chat room, let's talk about what are we expecting? If we lock the voltage in at 1.5, and like I said earlier, normal is 1 to 1.5, idle is probably 1, 1.5. What's the computer going to be thinking?
So Dan Beeson says this is a good demo of the PCM trying to figure out the plausibility between the two inputs.
And I think that goes to what I was talking about earlier. Back in the day, you know, if a sensor like I guess for whatever reason is causing the computer to only see 1.5 volts, probably would have grounded it. And I mean, it would have turned the car off and you would have had to get it towed in. Now the computer is it's trying to outthink you. It's saying, man, this is strange. I'm not seeing the kind of load that should be associated with the accelerator pedal position, kind of like a correlation issue. Correct?
Yes.
So in this case, when we started up, what are the expectations? I mean, in the first one, when we gave it, in the first case study, we gave it 0. And it was almost like it decided that the MAP sensor was unplugged, and it went to the MAF sensor, the mass airflow sensor, and allowed it to run to kind of protect I guess the owner of the car from having to walk, and it would have at least got him home. But then it eventually did turn on a check engine light. In this case, we're kind of locking the voltage into a voltage within the computer's range. It's expecting it at some point in time to see 1.5. Now it's seeing it all the time, and then Kevin's going to be moving the accelerator pedal. What do we expect? And Kevin, are you still there?
Yeah, you're talking, but we can't hear you, Kevin.
Why don't you go ahead and start it up? Man, there's some latency there. I think I'm going to unpin him. So it's idling. Check engine light came on right away. Can you accelerate it? Can you any way you could show turn the camera down to show you putting your foot on the Okay, that's kind of cool.
So in the comments, we see that it should increase the voltage, but we don't see any change.
Right. So the computer sees the accelerator pedal moving, correct? I mean, I would imagine, unless there's a failure with that too, but it doesn't see any type of a load on the engine, any kind of a pressure change. So it's not even letting it accelerate.
This is another great study in cause and effect
I think it's
for
kind
the
of cool.
students to understand these relationships.
So at this point, Kevin, once you turn the engine off, key back on, you go in and clear that one and put case study 12 in. I'm going to go in here and I want to read a code real quick just to see what came up on that one.
So one of the comments is, so the PCM has decided that the accelerator position sensor is faulted. And what is the DTC that's set? Sweep for DTCs and then failure mode, Jim says. So yes, that's where you're going right now.
So we're back to 106, PO 106, circuit range performance. And it also brought back up the accelerator pedal position sensor. You know, this is why I resent when I see commercials, you know, they say you can pull your car and we can pull a code and tell you what's wrong, because this really isn't telling us anything that's what's failed. It's telling us what circuits are having issues, but it surely isn't saying replace the accelerator pedal position sensor or the map sensor, or maybe it is. Maybe it wants to sell some parts and go on, but we know that there's more to it than that, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to clear those codes real quick, and we'll go to the last case study just for fun. Again, I'm going to make sure they're clear. Okay. Okay, so the last one is pinning the voltage that the computer sees at 4, 8, or say 5 volts. So go ahead and start it up. So it's slightly low RPM, no check engine light yet. How does it accelerate? I'm having trouble hearing you, but you're saying it's kind of sluggish. Was that a rod that came out of there? Don't need that anyway, right? So Kevin, since I'm having trouble hearing you, just nod your head or shake it. Would a customer bring a car in for how that feels right now? Would they know that there's anything wrong? Okay. Okay. So turn it off and start it back up again. Now would they bring it in? Because there's a check engine light on. So in all honesty, that's the only reason that they probably would even notice it, unless things change after you drive it a little bit. And we're sitting here with this bench, obviously stationary and static and no load, and we can simulate a whole lot of stuff here, but we don't even really know what in a real car it would do if you continue to drive it for a while and got it way up to temperature, et cetera. So. Okay. Let's see what that one sets just for fun. Should be a 108, yeah. So look, it's even got a pending and an active. The pending was probably before we turned it off and turned the key back on, but it's saying circuit input high. So, the first and the last one we did, case study 1 and 4, circuit was low or circuit was high, and then we manipulated the data in between and got performance problems that were real obvious. But hey, Kevin, can you mute? I'm done with you now. So my point is that, case study 1 and 4 were off scale high, off scale low. They threw a check engine light on, but probably didn't notify the driver a whole lot unless they're real observant, that there was a performance problem. When we stayed within somewhat the operating range, the 0.8 and the 1.5 volts, we got check engine light on, a little harder to get on, but then we definitely had performance problems. One was zero throttle response at all. So, all in all, I think it's kind of cool stuff to be able to show your students. I think they need to understand that in the real world, like I said, there is no perfect world of diagnosis. There's not the. I guess when I was trying to bug cars, when I was teaching, I would put a definite something into a car and have an expectation, and a lot of times it wouldn't manifest itself. And then this is the same deal here. I think. As we continue to kind of play with case studies or messing with the input to the computer, I'm finding out as we go that the computer tries to, I guess, save itself. It tries to heal itself, and sometimes it'll fool you. And so I think the general public needs to know that just pulling a code and replacing a part isn't the way cars are going to be fixed. I think students, and more importantly, our students need to know that there's a lot more to diagnosing than just putting a scan tool on there. And I like that, I'm just going to say, I like that our trainers, that we can do this kind of stuff. And it kind of takes us into territory that you don't get to go very often unless a customer brings a car in with that complaint, and you really get to all pile on it. But now you can pick the time and the day to put that complaint into a car, and you can get some really good discussion out of it. So I think it models our philosophy of we like helping you teach technology. So
cool.
What time is it anyway?
You're right on the nose.
Look at that. Good gosh.
Like you planned it.
Yeah.
So Tim, I don't think you were in when we were in our pre-discussion. Mr. Corcoran, who's on here, actually works for Hyundai, so he kind of had a lot of extra insight on the engine and everything. He was like really interested.
So was I on track, or
no? Well, he did say that there wasn't a mass airflow in that. So
okay. So the car learns some other way then. Okay.
So there was a question about whether I'm sending out a survey, and I just pushed that out. So if you could fill that out for hours and a certificate, we would appreciate it very much. Thank you.
And I'm going to stop the recording.